It was Villa, wasn't it?
It was 2 weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was Aston Villa.
Yeah.
So we asked Darren, of course you know, has this reputation of the sick note thing and the fact that he was injured a lot, which, by the way, we should say that Darren played more Premier League games than any other Spurs player ever has. Is that right, correct. Daniel? 299, I believe?
Yeah, it is.
299?
Yeah.
So anyway, I think you know where we're heading. So anyway, it was this NFL challenge, and people were kicking the American football there over the post to try and win a prize for the NFL.
And he was standing in, wasn't he? Standing in for Clive Allen.
He was. Clive Allen was going to do it. Who was doing commentary? So anyway. It was a kicker for the London Monarchs. That's right. So Darren was there, and he was just helping out, and he was a big NFL fan, and we talked about stuff. And then, you know, I made a joke with him afterwards, because he was saying to me, he said, it's so hard. He said, the difference in hitting a football compared to one of these is unbelievable. So at the end, thank you very much. Well done, this guy's won. I said, Darren, oh, yeah, you were going to, it was going to take one. You've got a slight injury, haven't you? Don't worry. So therefore, you don't have to take it. Bit of a joke. That was it. So anyway, there was some guy that tweeted, he worked for the BBC, and wrote, you know, sick note. Has, you know, he can't take this because can you believe he's actually injured? And it was obviously a joke. And then it started getting a bit out of control. People go, oh, yeah, he's really injured. Darren was a bit upset about it, understandably. So it's just from one small thing that you say, everyone's, oh, he's injured. Just for the record, he was not injured. It was a joke. That was it.
No.
And he wasn't upset with you. He was upset with how it was reported.
Yeah, absolutely, understandable. Because I had a phone, I said, Darren, I feel so bad about it, because I didn't even think, it was just I would have said the same thing to anybody, but of course, because of that sick note tag, sod's law did it happen.
Well, you know, he has a connection to Dallas, and I have a connection to him, and I met him when he played at the Dallas Cup, which is you'd never think that Dallas would be the home of one of the biggest junior football tournaments in the world, but he was here, and I can't. Where's he from, Dad? Is he from Bournemouth, or is he from? I know he's from Coyte. Yeah. So he was playing. He was playing for their under 19s, or I think it was under 19s for their super group, and they came here, and he stayed with a friend of mine whose dad was a high school football coach here, and he showed up at a fraternity party of ours when I was in college, and nobody knew who he was. He stood out like a sore thumb. Only person with an accent there in Fort Worth, Texas. And I said, "Who are you?"
Hold on. He didn't have an accent. They all had.
Well, that's true. Yeah,
just want to make that clear.
He was the only one with the pop up collar.
It was like, one of these things is not like the other, and so nobody. And this was back in 1990. Oh gosh, early 90s, right? So football, soccer here had a scant fraction of the popularity that it does now, and so I start chatting with him, English accent. I grew up in London, and so we started chatting, and he said, "Yeah, I play for Bournemouth, blah blah blah, but I'm going to play." Or Portsmouth, going to play in the Premier League. And I said, really? I said, for who? And he said, you've never heard of him before. He said, a club called Tottenham Hotspur. And I stood dead in my tracks.
No way.
So my bullshit detector is going off here, right? I'm like, no, because I'm the only guy for like hundreds of miles who knows who Tottenham Hotspur is. And,
excuse me, hang on now.
What?
There were two of us then. There were two of us.
Come on, after two of us. And why does Randy? He said, no. He said, I've been signed by Terry Venables and blah, blah, blah. And long story short, a year later, they actually showed his debut. And then I think a year after that, I think he got his first England cap. Ironically, either his first or his second England cap was against the U.S. at Wembley. And I think he might have even scored a goal. So, yeah, a little bit of a Dallas link with him. Marvelous player. Marvelous player.
He was.
Yeah, he was a great player.
All right, So fellas, you've obviously rattled off a ton of our legendary players, and that's just mind-blowing for us simple lads over here. So I know we've seen a ton of celebrities who are Spurs fans. More recently, Gretzky with an S, I think, was at pitchside. So for both of you, I guess, Daniel, you go first. Who is the most memorable, I guess, non-playing figure in your time that you've met?
Most memorable non-playing figure that I met.
Other than footballers.
Okay, that I met through being involved at Tottenham.
Yeah.
Non-playing. It's got to be the tea lady, because she keeps us going with tea during the cup tonight. No, jokes aside.
I was going to say me.
No, I mean, look, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, so my first season was, I think, Bill Nicholson's last, So, you know, meeting him was an obvious pleasure, but I was a little bit too young. I didn't really appreciate him for what he was because I didn't live through it. I don't mean to be blasphemous in saying that, but I didn't live through the 60s, so I wasn't around when he was achieving everything that he achieved for our great club. So for me, I think meeting Keith Birkinshaw, I grew up watching his team, you know, going to Wembley and all that kind of stuff with him. Meeting him was just phenomenal. And it was a real experience. I got to know Martin Jol very well. I watched the 2006 FA Cup final at my friend's house with him.
Did he call me an idiot by any chance?
No.
Okay, just wondered.
There was an adjective before that.
Yeah, I just wondered. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I was thinking of another famous story of Martin Jol. There was one game where the referee had an absolute nightmare, and he said to the referee after the game, "Am I allowed to call you a prick?" And he said, "No." He said, "Am I allowed to think you're a prick?" And he goes, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, but I think you're a prick." So anyway, that's one story that tells rather well. But no, so meeting Martin Jol and getting to know him was quite something. And watching the 2006 Cup final, it was the week after the Lasagna Gate game at West Ham, and West Ham were against Liverpool in the Cup final. You may remember Steven Gerrard scored an injury time equaliser, or a really late equaliser, which took it to extra time, and obviously Liverpool went on to win. When Gerrard scored the equaliser, I mean, you know, I'm not small, you've all met me, right? But Martin Jol, he picked me up with one arm and he threw me round. I've never been picked up. What a guy. So, yeah, I think getting to meet, obviously, Bill Nicholson, but Keith Birkinshaw and Martin Jol were, that was quite something for me.
What about you, Paul?
When you say non-playing, what do you mean? As in celebrities or people that work at the club? Or
yeah, because you've obviously had the luxury of meeting a lot of legendary figures from film and TV, and so who was the most memorable and why?
There's a few. I remember Jude Law being in the next box to us, and he looked over and waved at me, and I was like, oh. Well, I sort of waved, and I looked behind me, and Pat Jennings was sitting behind me, so then I realised it actually wasn't me after all. No, Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh is a huge Spurs fan. Anybody who would know me, he's the one that I really want to interview on the pitch at half-time, and I've seen him a few times. And he's he grew up in Northern Ireland, big fan of Mullery and Jennings and all the sides of the early 70s, but for some reason he's going, no, I don't think so. I think, but you're Kenneth Branagh, surely you could come out and do half-time. But no, he wouldn't do it. There's been a few. I mean, we had, I don't know how, Michael McIntyre probably is not a very well-known person in America, is he? Are you familiar with Michael McIntyre?
I know him, but he's not really popular over here.
Yeah, see, he wasn't with me for a little while. And,
there's a Berbatov story coming out here, isn't there, Paul?
Yeah, there is a Berbatov story coming in. Michael McIntyre's a huge stand-up comedian over here, and just enormous now, and big Spurs fan. And I was the one that introduced him to Spurs, because on a radio show I was doing, what I used to do is I had a Spurs screensaver, and any guest that would come in would go, wow, you're Spurs? I go, yeah, and then you bond, and then it's like, well, come along, and then that's how we used to do it. Just turn up, and then I'll do an interview with you at half-time. So Michael McIntyre was there, and he was very nervous and very edgy before he came out, and he was going to do a draw to win the Opus, our huge book thing that was thousands of pounds, which Daniel has, and he'll probably lend you if you ask him really nicely. So he came out on the pitch, and he was going, don't ask me anything! Like then I'm going, just calm down. And he was anyway. So I said, right, everybody, Michael McIntyre. Anyway, just went into this thing, and it was the first game we were playing Manchester United. It was the first game that Dimitar Berbatov had played at Spurs since he left for Manchester United. So he's gone to make the draw, and he's gone. The winner is. Well, I'll tell you who the loser is. It's Berbatov! And all the crowd's gone, oh, yeah. And I'm just thinking, my job's over. This is it. And I just remember looking into the camera lens and just going, I am so sorry. And I was certain that it was all over. He went into this long tirade about all the other players, and anyway, everybody seems to remember it. And I saw Michael a few years later, and he said, still people ask me about that, and loads of people still go, I was there that day. So it went from this horrendous moment for me thinking, well, let's get you back out again. So that was something else. But there's been a load. There really has.
Can I just say as well, I think it's quite relevant and poignant to mention today, talking of growing up in the 70s and 80s, one of the regular half-time guests back in the day doing that lottery draw was Warren Mitchell. He was a big Spurs fan.
Oh,
his season ticket was directly in front of mine when I was when I was a kid, and he sadly died this morning, age 89. So
did he? I had no idea.
Yeah, he died.
Good Lord! And I was going to mention Warren as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really sad news. I mean, this is it's a guy who was a great actor and comedian and made his name on a comedy show where he played a West Ham fan.
Alf Garnett.
Exactly, and he played Alf Garnett until death us do part, and it was a born and bred Spurs fanatic. Yeah. And it's amazing that people would still think West Ham is actually no, because he was always there, always at Tottenham.
Hey Sam, what was that show over here? All in the Family?
Archie Bunker.
Archie Bunker.
Yeah, that was based on that. Yeah,
that's right.
So, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, I saw a number of tweets this morning. So obviously he was, obviously not just a well-known figure, but well-known as a Spurs supporter. Loads of people.
And the remake of that series in the 80s, in Sickness and in Health, the theme music was sung by Chaz and Dave, of course.
Yes, very good.
Yes.
There's a little link. There you go. Sorry. Keeping it in the family.
I want to switch gears just a touch, but so much of what we've chatted about so far speaks to the atmosphere, the culture that we have as a club. And there was an interesting article that ESPN's SoccerNet published earlier in the week, and it was about atmosphere at matches. And they went and they interviewed either figurehead supporters or journalists that had some link to every club in the league to speak about changes in atmosphere. And I'd love to just get your thoughts on changes that you've seen over the years, particularly atmosphere at White Hart Lane, and what are the things that concern you, or are there any things that concern you going forward to make sure that we have the best atmosphere at the lane for supporters?
Yeah, this is something that's obviously really important, and I know from things that the chairman has said, and I've actually heard him say it, is they are really keen to ensure that the atmosphere at the new stadium is as good as it is at the current stadium, and that's why the stands will be as close to the pitch as it possibly can be. And they set up, when the stadium was first being discussed, something called the Heritage Committee, which I was part of back then. I'm not sure what's going to be happening going forward, but it was to make sure that the new stadium has the feel of Tottenham Hotspur, not just a soulless new bowl. And that's something which they really care about, and so that should be quite exciting. But there's times when, we're 3-0 up against Arsenal or Chelsea or the recent Man City 4-1 game, when all four sides of the ground are up singing and clapping and all that kind of stuff, stamping their feet. The gantry, which hangs off the roof of the East Stand, is absolutely rocking. And sometimes in commentary you hear me say White Hart Lane is rocking. Believe me when I say it, it really is. And I feel it hangs off the roof. Yeah.
One of the questions I often ask players, and I've asked ex-players and I ask current players, and still do. It's just there's that story about the crowd, they're the 12th man. Is it true? This is what I want to know. Is it really true? Do you really feel it? And they say absolutely. When as soon as they're playing and they start hearing, "Come on, you Spurs, come on," they feel it. And they say, well, don't hear specific words said, shouts. It's all a bit of a blur. But when you hear things like that, and they absolutely feel the crowd, so there is something there. And when that starts, like Daniel says, there's been those games where you absolutely feel it, and the excitement. And then you think, this is what it's all about, being a Spurs fan. It really is. Yeah. It's just a fantastic place to be when it's like that.
I read something this week, too, that they interviewed, I don't know if it's specific architects or design engineers for the new stadium, and they said it will be one of the loudest, the way that the acoustics are set up in the roof, in Europe. One of the loudest stadiums to attend.
Yeah. Like everything that Daniel's just said, there's so much work that's going into it. It is going to be one heck of a place to be. It really is. And, I can't wait. And it's going to be an interesting year. I think next year there'll be lots of things planned for our last year at White Hart Lane. But, it's not like other clubs are moving far away. We're right next door. So it's still going to have the feeling. There's so much. There's going to be a museum. And this is... It's a difficult thing, isn't it? Because so many clubs and things move on. And we've got this amazing history. And we absolutely hang on to that without... being, we're always harking back to the past, we're always doing that, but it's something we're proud of and something that we should still hang on to.
Definitely.
As for both of you, as someone who's been around the club and the area for so long, can you speak about the Northumberland Development Project, both as supporters and people familiar with the area, and have you had an opportunity to take a look at the designs to see what the new gantries are going to look like? I know, Daniel, I know you'll be really interested in that. Hopefully some heat, yes?
Well, I hope I still have a job by then. But yeah,
there's these pigeon spikes that are going to keep pigeons out, and they're going to have a hawk that's going to come round.